And look who we're joined by. It's Abhay himself. Hello, sir. How are we doing? We're good? Of course. Thank you for making time to, take a little bit of a moment out of your busy schedule and chatting with us here at SolanaFloor TV. This third day.
Wild space.
It's a wild space.
Not bad, right? This is prime.
We try and sort of stay on top of what's going on these days, but it's almost impossible. People have a 5-minute slot, and there's like 100 slots, and we can hear the madness, we can feel the energy, but we don't.
A lot of madness right now.
We don't really know what's going on. It's day 3. We're sort of
people are delirious on day 3,
right? Yes. But how are you feeling on day 3?
I'm good.
Clarity after the big announcement.
I mean, it's been a great week for us. Obviously, we started off the week with Helium House, which was super fun. We had 1,500 people show up.
Is that really how many people showed up?
Yeah, I had no idea.
We heard it was a great event.
The team did a great job. I'm a prop for these things. Right, like I show up and
you and I almost ruined the big announcement, didn't we? So we were filming a very short segment. We didn't quite know if it was live or not. We almost ruined the big announcement about Brazil, big expansion to Brazil. I saw you standing there with some gentlemen from Brazil.
Super Team Brazil. Out there. They're super excited. We told them about it. They're like, this is incredible.
Yeah.
I told them all to come out and, run around with their flags if they can.
Exciting. How was the reception after we sort of almost leaked it in our very short interview there? When you went on stage in the side event in the beach house, and you mentioned what was going on in Brazil. Obviously, it's a huge market. You'd previously announced a deal with Telefonica, I believe, in Mexico.
Yeah.
What was the reception like?
I mean, I think when is always the answer, right? I think with Brazil, like we're talking about more than 250 million potential customers, and we're going into Brazil, kind of the same way that we went into New York City, where there's an existing deployer who has 40,000 sites that already are, providing Wi-Fi connectivity through a captive portal. Like, when you go to an airport or a hotel, like this is, you go through this thing, you fill out a form, and then you're given access. They don't currently serve cell phone carriers, the local carriers, and they want to be able to. So, effectively what we're giving them is Helium in a box, right? Like, here's a way, we believe that the best way to connect is with the device that you already have in your pocket.
Yep.
You have everything you need. You have your SIM on here. That SIM should be enough to connect to any network in the world. And that's what Mambo is able to do now for any of the carriers in Brazil. They'll be able to instantly provide connectivity as soon as any of these subscribers walk in the door.
Oh, that's amazing. And it's called Mambo?
Mambo's the local partner that already has these sites, and they're ready to go.
Oh, that's so awesome. They already have one that's there ready to go.
Yeah, so that these sites are already deployed, and it's, what we hope is just a software change on their end and an integration with the local carriers, and that's what they're doing in their pilots right now. They already have, a pilot or two already live.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I myself am a Helium user. I live in the US, so I've got an old Saga phone that has a $5 plan on it, or a hat. I think they recently changed. But what you're able to offer is a great cell phone plan at a massive discount. Like, I think now I pay $30
for an unlimited plan.
Yeah, for an unlimited plan. And if I was to have that same plan at Verizon or any of the other big providers, it's $100+.
That's right.
So, to me, it's a fantastic product. It's like crypto native, and I mean, it's awesome. Like, I love.
It's enabled by crypto, and if you're like me, like I have, family, 2 kids, unlimited plans for multiple people just really start stacking up. Helium Mobile also has a family plan now.
Yes.
We have, you have a kids plan that is sort of limited that you can control as a parent. So, we're trying to bring a crypto-enabled network to everyone.
Yeah.
Right? Not just the individuals, or you and your roommates, which is what I used to have with the cell phone plan many years ago.
Yeah.
Now, you can have, your partner, your kids all on one plan.
Yeah.
Plan.
It's such a good connecting story. Like, when you think about crypto, and in general, it's very hard to explain. But what you guys are doing at Helium actually connects with a lot of people. We actually had Mike Reed from Franklin Templeton on. I don't know if you've met him.
I've met Mike, yeah.
But he said, he talks to a lot of people in TradFi, a lot of people that are new to crypto, and you guys are the company that he uses as the example. So I
have a funny story about Mike. I met Mike randomly in Austin once.
Okay.
And he's like, oh, what do you do? And I was like, I work on Helium. He's like, you are my example. when I tried to explain to somebody. It's like it was one of those like sort of serendipitous things where he just like we just randomly found each other.
I think he briefly mentioned this, and actually he told us maybe the full picture, which is that he cut in front of you in line.
He kind of bumped you or something.
Yep. Yeah. No, there was that. I was trying to be nice about it.
He said he bought you a beer after.
Yeah.
He
So
did
I think-
actually.
Yeah,
He did
yeah,
actually buy me a beer right after.
Yeah.
That's a good feeling. I mean, Franklin Templeton, $1.6 trillion, in assets, and he's bumping into you. He's using you as a store. It's awesome.
I mean, what we're seeing 2 million people connect to the network every single day.
Yeah.
These are average people that need cell phones connectivity.
Yeah.
These are not people like seeking out a crypto product. They're just seeking out a better connectivity.
Yeah, yeah. It's awesome.
So I just want to touch on that because you mentioned people seeking. You obviously live in the US. That was, I guess, the first market that you really found product market fit in. Mexico, huge market. Spanish-speaking country. Now Brazil, Portuguese-speaking country, also a huge market. These are very different markets, actually, right? For us Europeans, it's all sort of on that side of the world. But actually, it's very, very different. Vastly different markets, vastly different user bases, different languages. Is your plan for the next sort of 12 months to focus in your own backyard, if you will, focus on South America, and then maybe move elsewhere in the world? Or are you focusing more on prioritizing particular countries by size? What's your sort of plan of attack?
Well, unfortunately or fortunately, everything's on the blockchain. So you can go to world.helium.com and see where people are deploying hotspots and take some guesses at where we're looking. Like you can see hotspots in parts of Europe, in parts of Asia, South America, North America, of course. And in a lot of these places, it's about finding a local carrier partner that is interested in sort of expanding access for their customers. We haven't yet decided on this and whether or not we'll take the Helium mobile brand elsewhere outside of the US. But certainly, like when we, in Mexico, we found Telefonica's Movistar entity there. In Brazil, we actually found a deployer side to enter that. And so it's a slightly different strategy in each of these places. And what we're doing here is we're trying to understand what it's like to launch in these places.
Okay.
The thing about cell phone connectivity, like banking, like food, like every one of these things, like the local culture matters a lot.
Right.
Even here in the UAE, the local culture matters a lot. What is it like to do business here? We are learning as we go to each one of these countries and trying to understand how is it that we can provide the best and most useful service to them. Like ultimately, crypto shouldn't be about like, here's this like new thing that you have to learn. It's here's a thing that you already have that can be better.
Right.
Yeah, right. And that's the approach that we've taken, and like understanding that local context is what we're doing.
And what is, I guess, most attractive to users and deployers in Mexico? Is that the same set of reasons that people in Brazil want to become part of the system?
So I think the folks in Mexico, it's about connectivity outside of the cities, but also some of these cities, in many countries, cities are built up very, very quickly because of like mass migration into, right? This happens more, outside of the western parts of Europe or the sort of major cities in the United States. You see rapid expansion, and then the networks don't really like catch up. And the roads sometimes don't catch up, right? Yeah. As you travel around the world, you see this where there are parts of the world where you just see millions of people in a space, and then traffic is terrible. There's a good reason for it, right? It's because it's so rapidly expanding.
Rapid urban sprawl, yeah.
And that happens in cities. In Mexico, it is the case in a lot of the large cities there. But also there's a connectivity gap across the entire country as well. And I think that's something that, that's what we've learned in Mexico. It's very different than the US.
Right.
And then I think we'll learn very similarly. Like if you go to Brazil, if you go to Rio, like you'll see the same problem. There are parts of the city that like were built up so fast that the infrastructure wasn't able to catch up, and therefore there are gaps. And I think that's where we really, we are not going to be the best at providing the macro networks, the giant towers, the ones that are twice our height, that are sort of on top of buildings or on top of roofs. We're going to provide that amazing indoor coverage, the amazing like sort of middle coverage, in the streets for outdoor. That's where we're going to be the best, and that'll enhance the connectivity for the existing carrier. We'd love to work with folks like Lotto and others in Brazil to like sort of provide better connectivity wherever their consumers are going, because their consumers are going to go to different places every single day. True.
And I can't get over how big these markets are. You mentioned the population there, and it reminds me of something funny that I think George W. Bush said when he first landed in Brazil on a state visit. He gets out the plane and they show him some some map of Brazil and he goes, "Wow, Brazil's big." You know, it's not what you would expect the head of state to be saying.
Incredible that a head of state would say that, but yeah, sure.
Right? But is that something that you guys optimize around and focus on? Like, we want big countries with connectivity issues where sprawl is the problem in metropolitan areas, but there is still room to grow. And yeah, how do you think about expanding into big countries basically? What's your sort of plan of attack within the market once you've identified it, you found the partner, you've found the need? How do you approach that?
I mean, I think it is very, very sort of has to be personalized, right? For the countries that are sort of, let's say, very, very small. Like if you think about a country like Singapore or Korea or Switzerland, like the kind of strategy that you do in a place like that is going to be very different than what you do in Brazil. Really, in the United States is actually another great example. Like it's actually probably very similar to Brazil. Okay. We have a lot of large urban centers, and then we have lots of space in the middle, but there are tons of people there, right? There are tons of people in Iowa, as much as the people in New York and California probably ignore it as much as don't think about it. There are tons of people there, and they have connectivity needs as well, and we should be serving them. Yep. Right. And so, the strategy is the sort of hybrid strategy. Like, let's build up the space in the cities that need it. Let's build up the indoor coverage everywhere, right? We should allow any venue operator, if you're in Des Moines or in San Francisco, to be able to convert their indoor coverage that they already have into Helium hotspots and provide connectivity to every single carrier that every single subscriber of any carrier that walks in the door.
That's really interesting, because when we think about DePIN, I think, and this is sort of something that's come apparent through our conversations with people like Emmett, who was on stage just a second ago. Scale is obviously an issue. The physical element of building DePIN is obviously an issue. And Emmett was explaining that, you can build the hardware, you can build the software, but then getting it into the hands of people all around the world in different jurisdictions with different legal requirements, different costs, is actually, it turns out it's really difficult.
Yep. Hardware is hard. Turns out.
Right. So he was explaining that we're going to be talking with HiveMapper lately, who I assume have faced similar issues with,
for sure,
getting physical hardware into the hands of people all over the world. And to what extent do you think about that as a problem that you've successfully circumvented versus scale as something that's being necessary, almost a prerequisite for profitably operating a DePIN project? How do you think about these issues?
I mean, I think ultimately it's hard to build something new, especially in the hardware space, without knowing that it's going to succeed on this, right? Because the scale of operations, I've talked to Emmett about this in the past, we actually built a mapping device, and the mapping device was effectively a phone. It just didn't have a screen, because it had all of the features of a phone. It had an LTE radio, it had a Wi-Fi chip, it had a LoRaWAN chip, it had the GPS chip in there. Essentially, from a hardware perspective, it was a phone, except for a screen. That's it. And the screens are actually the simplest parts of these things.
Right.
Turns out. Right?
Because someone else has already made them.
Because you just kind of slap a screen on top of the entire sort of insides of the things, right? So because you need a battery, you need all these bits, and you need to do designs for the antennas to make sure that they don't all conflict with each other. These are all problems that you have to solve when you're building hardware.
And of course, the end user doesn't see any of that.
And the end user,
why have I not got my thing yet?
The end user shouldn't see any of that. And that's really the feature. And I think one of the things that we've realized, especially this year when we launched Helium Plus, it was a way to allow people that already have Wi-Fi deployments that are professionally installed to be able to convert them. That is a way for us to grow much, equally, alongside these sort of what we call greenfield, where buy a Helium branded hotspot, deploy it in a site that doesn't actually have any coverage yet. Right. These two things together will allow us to scale. And one of the things that I've talked to Ariel about at HiveMapper, how do you consider enabling other people to build the hardware or use existing dashcam hardware? For us, it was using existing Wi-Fi APs, right? It's a hack, but it's a hack that works, right? Because it allows you to have just dramatically increased distribution, and that's what networks like ours need, that massive distribution for it to be
operating
useful.
Profitably, or for utility.
For utility, one of the coolest things that we've seen, in New York City, for example, is that Helium Mobile. The reason why the business is interesting and more interesting than other mobile virtual network operators like Mint or Booster or things like that it's interesting because we're not just using the existing telco carriers, but we're also using our native Helium coverage.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And we're
that
seeing
hybrid approach.
that hybrid approach, and we're seeing, and this is, and we find that this is pretty impressive that we're seeing 30% of usage on our native network versus the traditional carrier networks. And that allows us to offer the $30 a month service unlimited. That's what enables it. And that's what we should be doing more. And we should see more of this, and over the next year, we're going to be this is going to be our focus in the United States is how do we get from 0 to 30% in more cities? And then how do we get New York from 30 to, let's say, 50%?
Okay, so you're still focusing on growth at home and the home market.
Absolutely.
I guess we can call it the home market.
Yeah, our number one our first market is still our market that we're going to spend a ton of time.
Yeah,
for sure.
It's an awesome goal too to like help provide cell coverage where there isn't any, right? There's so many dead zones around where if you're able to actually do that on a small scale, like locally, that's just a fantastic product, right? You're just like helping people out. And then on top of that, you can offer them, much better plans, at least in the US for now, right?
I mean, the hack, the hack that we've all sort of accepted is you go to the coffee shop and you ask for the Wi-Fi password. It's a terrible hack, right?
Yeah, it really is.
I should just walk into the coffee shop and my phone should just connect.
And that's one of that's a really cool feature. Like, how do you even do that?
I mean, the technology has been around for a while, turns out. It just hasn't been put together in that particular sort of configuration.
Is that to do with intermediaries and people wanting to paywall stuff? And
It's the fact that we, eSIMs haven't really been sort of prevalent on all of our phones until relatively recently. This technology Passpoint, which is what we use to sort of enable this, that has not been on a lot of hardware until relatively recently. It's been around for a while. The protocol's been around for a very long time. But like we are at a really good time right now where all we have to do is go work with, your sort of carrier and say, hey, we want to authenticate your users.
Yeah.
We want to allow your users to just automatically connect to our network.
Yeah.
And and if you're interested, you can pay us for that.
Yeah.
Right? That's valuable to your customers because you're providing connectivity wherever you are indoors.
Yeah.
And for the carriers, they don't have to go to every one of these venues or every one of these coffee shops or malls and sort of do a one-off deal with them anymore. Right?
Yeah.
They can just do essentially one-off deal with the Helium network.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so awesome.
I mean, 2 million big number.
We can get better. I mean, there are 400 million cell phone subscribers in the United States, and that's where we want to get to.
Yeah, why wouldn't they choose Helium? Like in my mind, it's like once you get past that hump, it's like it's such a better option.
I think at this point, I think we're just limited by the scale of the network itself. There are only 120,000 hotspots.
Yeah.
Some of those hotspots are, an entire airport, and some of them are just a single device in a coffee shop.
Yeah.
But as we continue to grow hotspot deployments, that 2 million number will also continue to grow.
Yeah. Yeah. I see it as it just keeps going up, and like it is just like a brilliant example of what DePIN can do and what crypto can do. I mean, when I think of DePIN, I think of Helium. Like I think it's like the number one. I don't even know the exact rankings, but at least in like mind share, I think of Helium.
Yep.
So it's extremely well done.
Yeah, we've reported on it a lot, and I think if Mike Reed says it's the easiest reasoning by analogy that I've found as far as it works, it obviously makes sense.
Yeah.
I think it's safe to assume that Mike Reed talks to a lot of older individuals than you and I do.
Yeah.
We're stuck in this sort of crypto bubble, but tokens and incentives, I think it's something that pairs really nicely with the physical world element of DePIN, at least from our perspective. So talk to me about token incentives, to what extent they've been a driver in boosting the number of hotspots in places like the US versus places like Mexico. Is there a different level of apprehension or optimism around the tokenomics, around the crypto element of DePIN versus in those two markets? And I guess more interestingly, do you think when you go to Brazil, when you start expanding in Brazil, do you expect Brazil to behave more like Mexico or more like the US in terms of how warmly they welcome the crypto element of DePIN?
I think we're just learning. We're still at that stage. I think the one thing that would be very interesting to point out is, when we started the year, we had sort of tens of thousands of signups on Helium Mobile. We pulled crypto from the front end. We pulled crypto from the experience.
Yep.
Much to probably the earlier subscribers' chagrin, you probably were kind of annoyed about that.
Yeah,
in some way, yeah, and totally understand, right? But ultimately, why are we at 500,000 signups? It's because we provide a very simple, cheap, affordable cell phone service, and the crypto part enables that business. Right. And so, in the United States, at least for the pure consumer product, it makes sense for us to not show the crypto part, at least in the front end. Right. But deployers are still earning HNT. Right. So when you deploy a hotspot, when a phone connects to you, and that the traffic is getting paid, you're earning HNT today, and that'll continue to be the case. What we've done is we're going to continue to iterate on how to make that experience better as well. One of the things that we talked about a couple of weeks ago is how do we improve the hotspot onboarding experience? How do we make it such that you're not thinking about the 12-word seed phrase anymore? Right. This is just like, this was important for us. It's important for us in crypto to realize that UX sucks. It's not accessible to most people.
You have to take the complexity out of a lot of what you're doing. And that's what we're seeing. And I feel like that's where Solana has always excelled, is like offering something that's easier to use, but it needs to go that much further, right?
And constantly iterating as well. I mean, you talk about experience. I'm going to struggle to open the box. I think it's the worst part of the experience, but it is the new SolanaFloor hardware wallet. Anyway, it's not going to come out of the Shield. It's a debit card.
But it's a card, right? It's an EMV card. It's a very well-known interface, right? Like everyone has like 2 or 3 of them in their pocket. And so it's like kind of a well-known thing.
Yeah, and it's easy to use, and to your point, it's the result of an iterative process, and I think we'll continue to see crypto and particularly Solana projects keep iterating. What can you sort of pinpoint in the next 12 months? We're used to getting, I guess, quarterly updates from you guys, and we report on the developments a lot. But what can you sort of tease a little bit, or give us a bit of alpha about what you're working on in 2026? What can we look forward to?
Well, I tease it a little bit along the way. It's more cities that have sort of denser coverage, us really spending the time to grow both the Helium mobile subscriber base and the deployer base in a lot of the different cities in the US. We'll continue to ship countries. There are a few more in the wings that we're not ready to talk about yet.
Okay.
But there are a few more in the wings. And we're really excited to sort of keep pushing. I mean, the best alpha is honestly Helium Worlds. It shows you where these hotspots are, and people call us out on it. I'm sure people already knew about Brazil, and there are folks that were already kind of talking about. It's like, oh, it's probably, actually, I do remember one community member. It's probably Brazil, right? But you can't tell me, and
he said, "I'm not going to tell you."
I'm not going to tell you. So like, you already set me up that way.
Okay. So we'll do some on-chain digging. We have some sleuths working at SolanaFloor. We'll try and figure it out, and we'll do our best to not leak it. In that case. Okay. So we're obviously in the capital of capital, and one of the discussions that's emerged this week is you've got DeFi projects, you've got DePIN projects, you've got the total degens. You got the ETF issuers, the DATCos, the $1 trillion asset managers, all under the same roof. And it's a bit messy. And from the outside, people are saying, well, has crypto lost its original ethos? Or, the other side of the argument is this is totally fine because people are sort of operating in their own different silos, and this is just the network, open permission, and so on and so forth. Do you have any strong feelings about how far we've come in that journey of maturity, and whether or not we've lost touch with the reasons that we all came together in the first place?
I mean, I think the reasons why we came together, or at least the reason why I came here, is I wanted better access to these systems, right? And more accessibility, for me, it's a phone, for what I do every day, it's I want to be able to offer a free phone plan to more people in the world.
Yeah.
Right. And if the way that we get there is by providing more access to sort of hiding, there always been maximalists in crypto. Right. I've worked on
there always will be.
And there always will be maximalists in crypto. And I think that's okay. I think we some of those sort of core cypherpunk ideals are why we exist.
Yeah.
And I think we should acknowledge that those are still important. I think privacy is still important. I think private money is still important. And so all of these things will always be strong in crypto and will continue to be.
Yeah.
At the same time, I want to give my mom access to a wallet.
Yeah.
And I want her to be able to have better phone connectivity and better finance and better access to yield and everything else. That's what we need.
Yeah,
that seems to be the direction that we're moving in, and we could talk about this all day.
I'm sure.
Global and South American expansion plans, but unfortunately, that is all the time we have. Abhay, thank you so much for coming out.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Keep up the good work. We really appreciate it.
From Breakpoint, number 3 We're here in Abu Dhabi, the capital of capital, and don't go anywhere. We're going to be chatting with Kalshi next.
All right, thanks.